What makes the 15 most dangerous Hells Angels members more than just criminals? It's not just the bad things they've done in the past, or the violent crimes. It's how they can rise through the ranks, take charge of the system, and make their power stronger. These people were famous for a reason. They survived by being cruel for years and controlling the Hells Angels. This investigation shows that the club's most dangerous members were not just alive, they did well in chaos and became legends of fear. Number 16. Yves Trudeau, the Killer. Yves Trudeau, who was known as the Killer, was one of the most dangerous Hells Angels members, not only because he was violent, but also because he could lead, manipulate, and scare people wherever he went. Trudeau was born in Montreal in the early 1950s. His early life was hard, and he had trouble with the law, but it was his entry into the world of outlaw motorcycles that would define his dark legacy. In the 1970s, he joined the Hells Angels and quickly moved up the ranks because he was ruthless and willing to do whatever it took to keep the club in power. At first, his violent behavior made him stand out, but it was his role in some of the club's worst crimes that made him famous. Trudeau worked as an enforcer for the Hells Angels and was in charge of some of the club's most brutal and planned operations. His job wasn't just to scare people, it was to make sure that fear spread across Canada and beyond, keeping the Hells Angels at the top of the biker world. He wasn't just a member, he was a key player in the club's operations, running the illegal drug trade and settling internal disputes with extreme measures. In a world that valued loyalty and violence, Trudeau showed both in a very scary way. His criminal history was long and included everything from violent assaults to, most famously, multiple murders. Trudeau's role in the Canadian drug trade was especially important because his connections in the club helped bring drugs into Canada and other countries, which led to a global network of crime. By the middle of the 1980s, his fame was so great that both the police and other gangs were afraid of him. The violent biker war between the Hells Angels and the Rock Machine Motorcycle Club was the most important time in his life. This war was very bloody, with a lot of attacks, counterattacks, and brutal murders. During this time, Trudeau was ruthless and strategic, getting rid of rivals and taking over important areas. He didn't just kill people, he was very good at planning and carrying out the most ruthless hits. His cold and calculating nature made him a scary figure, even among his own people, as word spread that he would do whatever it took to keep the club alive. In the late 1990s, he was arrested for his role in a string of murders connected to the biker wars, which was when he was at the height of his fame. People were shocked when he was caught, which showed how violent he had been. In the years that followed, people began to associate Trudeau's name with the violence of the Hells Angels. Even though he was found guilty, people still feared him. Trudeau was seen as a symbol of loyalty and violence that never stopped, even among the Hells Angels. His part in the gang's history was a reminder that being loyal to the club often meant paying with blood. He was both a great leader and a terrible nightmare during his reign. He could be very smart and very destructive. His story wasn't just about violence, it showed how far someone could go in the Hells Angels by being scared, in charge, and willing to go to the darkest places. Even today, the club and the police are still haunted by his legacy. The Killer was one of the darkest figures in the history of the Hells Angels. Dean, Ralph Sonny Barger.
Why don't you people go home? Get out of here, you bastard!
Ralph Sonny Barger was a Hells Angel and one of the most violent outlaw bikers. Barger was born 1,938 inches, Modesto, California. He had a boring childhood, but he joined the Hells Angels in the 1950s to rebel and live outside society's laws. Barger swiftly became Oakland chapter president, guiding the club's activities and power. Barger advanced swiftly in Hells Angels. He was a bold leader, tough, and able to control his chapter as the Hells Angels became one of the world's most feared motorcycle clubs. His leadership transformed the Hells Angels from a loose group of bikers into a brutal, well-organized gang that ruled the streets and criminal underground. The Oakland chapter grew to be one of the biggest and most powerful in the club under his leadership. The Hells Angels gained strength and influence. People wanted Sonny Barger dead because he was violent and broke the law. His crimes included drug trafficking, assault, and murder. Combating rival gangs, especially the Mongols Motorcycle Club, made him seem more menacing and unpredictable. He avoided the most serious accusations because he knew how to work the system and had many loyal supporters. The media often linked him to violent occurrences that garnered attention. Barger managed the Hells Angels' multiple illicit enterprises and club operations well. Inside and outside the club, he was powerful and feared. Club members who knew crossing him would have dire consequences were likewise terrified of him. His crimes were about power and violence. Power was essential for outlaw biker survival, he understood. Barger went to prison in the 1980s after being convicted, a pivotal moment in his career. Despite his conviction, Barger retained control. He became much more famous in prison by running the club. He became a leader who could make people obey and fear him no matter what after his prison sentence. Sonny Barger represented the Hells Angels after his release. He was tough and no-nonsense for the club. He frequently appeared in the media to defend outlaw motorcyclists' rights and the club's honor. He became one of the most famous Hells Angels members due to his public image. Despite his fame, Barger was hazardous. He symbolized Hells Angels' ferocity and power. His violent crimes and strategic connections made him terrifying. Barger's legacy haunts the Hells Angels, who were known for their violence and rebellion. Sonny Barger was a leader who understood authority, loyalty, and fear, not just a frightening biker. As Hells Angels' leader, he was always seeking power and willing to use violence. He is one of Hells Angels' most fearsome leaders, and his legacy is secure. Number 14. George, the Ghost, Christie. George, the Ghost Christie, is a hero to outlaw bikers, especially Hells Angels members. Christie was born in California in 1949 and didn't want to be a part of society. Christie had a tough teenage years, but then she joined outlaw bikers and became a Hells Angels legend. As the Hells Angels started to act more aggressively on the streets of California, Christie quickly became one of the club's most ruthless and strategic thinkers. After joining the Hells Angels in the late 1960s, Christie quickly moved up the ranks. People knew he was violent, and his actions showed that he would do anything to keep the club safe. Christie was known for being a bad leader when he was president of the Hells Angels Ventura chapter for a few years. He made the chapter bigger and stronger, making it one of the most feared in California. Christie was important to both the Hells Angels' illegal activities and their leadership. Christie's ability to move around in the criminal underworld was very important to the Hells Angels' drug dealing, money laundering, and violent revenge. Christie was cold and planned everything ahead of time. He was a smart guy who knew a lot about organized crime and helped the Hells Angels reach their goals. He was known for having violent fights over territory with other gangs. Christie helped the club fight the Mongols Motorcycle Club, which started a war. The Hells Angels and Mongols fought hard, and a lot of people died and were hurt. Christie, a key member of the Hells Angels, planned and carried out several attacks on Mongols, which made him look like a cruel and deadly person. Christie was also involved in the Hells Angels' drug dealing and biker fights. Christie was in charge of giving out a lot of drugs on the West Coast for the club. He was one of the Hells Angels' most dangerous members because he planned and carried out crimes for the club. Christie's legacy isn't just his violent work. After leaving the club, he did interviews and wrote a memoir about his time with the Hells Angels. Christie thought about his past and became a supporter of the outlaw lifestyle in his later years, but he stayed away from the violence of his youth. Even though George the Ghost Christie has tried to distance himself from his past, he is still a symbol of the Hells Angels' brutality and intelligence. His leadership in Ventura helped the Hells Angels become famous, and they still feel the effects of his crimes. Christie's story is about staying alive, being violent, and doing whatever it takes to get power. He was the ideal Hells Angel, smart, cold-blooded, and devoted to keeping the club safe. His legacy is one of the scariest, and he will always be remembered as a part of the Hells Angels' darkest and most dangerous times. Number 13. Maurice Boucher.
Boucher was a killer, and he knew everyone knew. He seemed to love it.
The infamous leader of the Hells Angels Quebec chapter, Maurice Boucher, was a guy whose name was associated with acts of violence and fear. As the architect behind one of the most brutal chapters in the history of criminal activity in Canada, Boucher was notorious. He had a reputation for possessing a hard leadership style and employing ruthless strategies. There were a number of killings committed in cold blood during his tenure as the commander of the Hells Angels Nomads, and he was involved in a conflict with the Rock Machine that never came to a conclusion. In the 1970s, Boucher became a member of the Hells Angels, which marked the beginning of his climb to prominence. It didn't take long for him to earn a reputation for being violent and unwaveringly loyal to the team. The decade of the 1990s found him at the pinnacle of the criminal world, having attained the position of president of the Quebec chapter. As a means of maintaining control over Quebec's drug trade and other criminal operations, his rule was characterized by an increase in violent crime and the planning of a large number of killings. However, Boucher was not only a powerful individual, he was also an excellent planner. He was well aware that in order to maintain his position of authority, he needed to eliminate his adversaries, both within and without the Hells Angels organization. The violent Quebec Biker War, which was fought between the Hells Angels and the Rock Machine, was directly caused by Boucher's desire for power within the motorcycle community. More than 150 people were slain during the battle, and Boucher was responsible for a significant number of the murders that took place. Due to the fact that he was skilled at planning and instilling terror in his adversaries, he was considered to be one of the most feared and respected commanders in the organization of outlaw bikers. One of the most notorious crimes committed by Boucher was the murder of prison guards. It was well known that he instructed people to assassinate security guards in order to send a message to the authorities. These acts of violence demonstrated to everyone that he was a formidable adversary who could not be ignored. As a result of Boucher's leadership, the Hells Angels achieved a tremendous deal of success, and they expanded their influence and operations outside of Canada. Despite the fact that Boucher was successful in his illegal career, it eventually came to an end. After being found guilty of multiple killings, he was sentenced to life in jail without the possibility of parole. Even though he was incarcerated, he was still a powerful individual who was able to exert control over the Hells Angels from within his cell and pull strings within the organization. Due to his ruthless leadership, relentless ambition, and readiness to use violence to maintain his position, Maurice Boucher is remembered as one of the most deadly and feared members of the Hells Angels. This is due to his desire to use violence to maintain his control. Number 12. The Beast from the East, Vincent Big Vinny Girolamo.
What kind of, let's see,
In the world of motorcycle gangs, Vincent Big Vinny Girolamo is a well-known leader of the Hells Angels East Coast. Girolamo was known as the Beast from the East because of how brutal he was as the Manhattan Sergeant-at-Arms for the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club. His ruthless ferocity, discipline, and unmatched ability to carry out the club's orders made him a legend among outlaw bikers. Girolamo grew up in tough neighborhoods in Manhattan, which made him brutal. Girolamo quickly learned the harsh rules of the street in a neighborhood where violence was necessary to stay alive. He became the leader of the Hells Angels by being tough and planned violence. He was known for being tough. He didn't just follow the Hells Angels' rules of loyalty, power, and control, he lived them. Girolamo, the Sergeant-at-Arms of the Manhattan chapter, had a lot of power to keep order and grow the club's presence on the East Coast. He broke bones and scared enemies, but he also made sure that no one crossed the line and followed the club's complicated rules. He kept order by quickly and harshly punishing club members who questioned his authority. The club and other gangs were scared of him because he was calm and efficient and was willing to take drastic measures. Girolamo stood out from other enforcers because of how strong he was. He was a big man who made people respect him. He was dangerous not only because of his size, but also because he was so mean. Girolamo spoke it well, in a world where violence was the only way to talk. He was called the Beast from the East because he was violent and unwilling to give up power. His role in the Hells Angels' internal affairs during a rough time is an important part of his legacy. He was the enforcer for one of the club's most important chapters and fought other gangs with violence. Girolamo was in charge of these brutal and never-ending fights. He made sure the club's enemies knew what would happen if they messed with the Hells Angels. His ability to scare opponents helped the Manhattan chapter become one of the club's strongest. Girolamo's impact extended beyond aggression. He could also scare his enemies and make them unable to move. Most people would be scared off by his reputation alone. but when he needed to take action, he did, breaking lives and souls. Girolamo's death in 1979 was one of the most important events for the club. The Manhattan chapter was shocked by Girolamo's death, not just because he was an enforcer. His death almost started a civil war among the Hells Angels, which shows how important his leadership and influence were. His sudden death sent shockwaves through the ranks for years. Vincent "Big Vinny," Girolamo's legend as the Beast from the East, lives on after his death. It reminds us of how violent the Hells Angels were. He is a legend in the history of outlaw motorcycle gangs because he had power, violence, and an unending desire to be in charge. People who knew Girolamo and people who heard the stories will always think of him as someone who was part of the Hells Angels' wild power and unbreakable control over the underworld. Number 11. Walter Nurget Stadnick. Walter Nurget Stadnick served as the commander of the Hells Angels chapter in Canada for a considerable amount of time. Those who have had any kind of interaction with the Hells Angels are frightened by his name. He was the president of the Hells Angels Nomads chapter, and his illegal activities extended from Canada to the back roads of the United States. Stadnick was a legendary figure in the motorcycle community. As a result of his capacity to plan violent crimes and his authority over the Hells Angels in Canada, he became one of the most deadly men in the world of motorcycles. The biography of Stadnick begins in the early 1980s when he became a member of the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club. He was able to work his way up through the ranks of the Canadian Hells Angels, and by the early 2000s, he had reached the position of national president of the organization. During his tenure as leader, the club expanded its criminal activities, with a particular emphasis on extortion, money laundering, and the distribution of illegal drugs. Not only was Stadnick dangerous because he had the ability to exert control over the Hells Angels, but he was also willing to resort to violence in order to maintain his position of authority. A significant participant in the Quebec Biker War, which was a conflict between his club and the Rock Machine and other criminal organizations, he was a crucial figure in the conflict. While the conflict was going on, there were a great number of executions and violent deaths that took place, and Stadnick was responsible for many of them. Assaulting and killing a number of influential members of the Rock Machine was one of the most significant activities that Stadnick took. By virtue of this, the Hells Angels became the most powerful organization in the region. It was due to the fact that he was able to plan these hits without being discovered by the authorities that he was a widely respected character in the world of outlaw bikers. He was a criminal mastermind who was responsible for more than just the crimes he committed on the streets. He was associated with the act of money laundering and was the primary individual responsible for the expansion of the Angels into the worldwide drug trafficking industry. Despite the fact that Stadnick was capable of committing a great number of crimes, his downfall occurred when he was finally apprehended and condemned to prison for his involvement in a number of homicides. Even though he was given a sentence of life in jail, his reputation as a ruthless and intelligent commander has not changed to this day. Number 10. The brutal enforcer, David Atwell. He was a main enforcer for the Hells Angels during the 1980s and 1990s, and he played a significant role in the operations of the gang during that time period. David Atwell was among the most prominent members of the Hells Angels. She was infamous for her harsh temperament and was involved in a wide variety of violent acts, including the distribution of drugs and the commission of murder. Atwell was also involved in a number of other violent actions. Every single one of these acts was committed with the intention of providing the gang with assistance in keeping control over all of the unlawful activities and territories. He was a well-known person who had a significant role in the formation of the Hells Angels, which eventually became the most influential organization in the Pacific Northwest. Furthermore, he was a significant member of the Harley-Davidson Motorcycle Club chapter in the state of California. Among the most violent activities that the gang participated in, Atwell was in charge of organizing attacks on members of rival gangs and ensuring that the gang's interests were protected in the illegal drug trade. He was also responsible for ensuring that the gang's interests were protected. Because he was able to organize hits and eliminate threats, the Hells Angels feared him. This was owing to the fact that he was able to neutralize threats. The sale of methamphetamine and cocaine was his job within the drug business that the gang controlled. His contributions to the Hells Angels' presence in the region and his coordination of the shipment of drugs were two of the most important aspects of the activities that took place in the Pacific Northwest. He played a major role in both of these aspects. At long last, Atwell was taken into custody and charged with a multitude of charges, including homicide, racketeering, and drug trafficking. His testimony reveals how vicious the beginning of the gang was and how far its members are willing to go in order to protect their criminal empire with any means necessary. Number 9. Paul Merle Aishide, the Killing Machine. The name Paul Merle Aishide was the kind of name that would send shivers down the spine of anyone who was a part of the biker world. This was the case whenever someone heard the name Paul Merle Aishide. As a result of his involvement in a number of other violent actions, including murder, the name Aishide became synonymous with horror and cruelty. Aishide was a guy whose name became synonymous with these terms. It was common knowledge that he had been involved in these horrible activities from the beginning. While he was a member of the Hells Angels, he took part in violent conflicts that sent a loud and clear message to anyone who had the audacity to engage in such activity. He was a member of the Hells Angels. One of the most notable acts that Aishide did was the murder of Cynthia Garcia, which generated a great deal of outcry among members of the Hells Angels Club. Garcia was subsequently put to death as a consequence of his acts, which were a direct result of his participation in the slaughter. The fact that Garcia was brutally murdered in a manner that was both violent and vicious was universally acknowledged by the majority of people there. The way in which Garcia was murdered was described as being quite savage, and he was associated with the group that was responsible for the murder. It was not a random act of violence because Aishide was participating in the killing. Rather, it was a deliberate effort that was designed to scare anyone who would challenge the Hells Angels and to send a warning to anyone who may cross the gang. Aishide was involved in the assassination. Specifically, the assassination was carried out with the intention of accomplishing both of these goals. Through his acts, it was abundantly clear that Aishide was a man who lived for power and violence. This was demonstrated by the fact that his actions presented evidence of this. Because of his callous demeanor and the fact that he did not hesitate to take action when he judged that it was essential to send a message, he was regarded as one of the most dreaded members of the Hells Angels. This was due to the fact that he did not hesitate to take action. His reputation as one of the most brutal members of the Hells Angels continues to endure, despite the fact that his criminal career ultimately led to him being captured and sentenced to prison. His reputation has endured for a substantial amount of time. In the future, his legacy will continue to endure. Number 8. The Quiet Killer, Adam Lee Hall. Adam Lee Hall, a member of the Hells Angels Massachusetts chapter, is not typically thought of as someone who engages in violent or noisy altercations. This is because such behavior is not typical for him. The account of Hall's time spent in the gang, on the other hand, is one of icy precision and unceasing ambition. Hall did not behave in the same manner as many of his contemporaries, who were boisterous and rude and flaunted their authority. The Quiet Killer worked in the shadows, planning and carrying out killings with chilling efficiency. He was a man who operated in the shadows. There was a triple killing that took place in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, and Hall is most well known for his involvement in that crime. When a large investigation into a criminal organization was being conducted, the deaths were part of a bigger scheme to prevent individuals from speaking out who may testify against him and other members of the Hells Angels motorcycle gang. Hall committed crimes not because he was angry or because he wanted to, but rather because he chose to do so to safeguard both himself and his club from potential danger. He was well aware that it was necessary to destroy those who had the capability of bringing the Hells Angels to their knees. He carried out this strategy in order to accomplish this goal. The murders, which had been painstakingly planned throughout the entire process, came as a shock to the people who lived in the region. Hall sacrificed the lives of the victims without giving it a second thought in order to ensure that no one would survive to have the opportunity to talk about what had occurred. He became increasingly well known within the gang as a result of his icy attitude toward these murders. Because of his ability to maintain composure and follow out his plan without becoming emotional, Hall was considered to be one of the most dangerous members of the Hells Angels. Came as a shock to the people who lived in the region. Hall sacrificed the lives of the victims without giving it a second thought in order to ensure that no one would survive to have the opportunity to talk about what had occurred. He became increasingly well known within the gang as a result of his icy attitude toward these murders. Because of his ability to maintain composure and follow out his plan without becoming emotional, Hall was considered to be one of the most dangerous members of the Hells Angels. The fact that Hall was involved in the triple homicide ultimately caught up with him, despite the fact that he appeared to be calm and in control. 3 counts of first-degree murder were brought against him, and he was found guilty of all of them. That the Hells Angels were willing to kill in order to protect their empire was demonstrated by his conviction, which dealt a significant blow to the Hells Angels' business in the state of Massachusetts. The fact that Hall maintained his composure made him even more terrifying, demonstrating that there are times when the most dangerous people are the ones who keep to themselves. We are reminded by his terrifying account of the lengths that people would go to in order to safeguard their position. Number 7. Alan Passaro, the killer of Altamont. Alan Passaro, a member of the Hells Angels, was well known because of the Altamont Free Concert incident. Passaro was born in California in the early 1950s into a violent and unstable family, which led him to crime. He knew from the start that he had to demand respect to stay alive. His ruthless behavior as a motorbike outlaw made him famous with the Hells Angels. Passaro became an enforcer for the Hells Angels San Francisco Bay Area chapter in the late 1960s. Passaro, who was known for being cold, was in charge of keeping the gang's territory safe and getting back at people violently. People were afraid of him because he quickly and decisively dealt with problems with rivals and disloyal club members. People mostly knew Passaro for what happened at the Altamont Free Concert, not for his violent actions underground. The Rolling Stones show at the Altamont Speedway on the 6th of December 1969 was protected by the Hells Angels. The crowd made a calm concert, rowdy and out of control. Passaro, who worked as a security guard, got into a fight with one 8-year-old Meredith Hunter at the concert. Passaro stabbed Hunter to death after he allegedly showed a weapon. The movie changed the Hells Angels' past. Passaro's actions killed Hunter and cemented the Hells Angels' reputation as violent and unpredictable. Passaro was charged with second-degree murder, but was found not guilty after saying he acted in self-defense. Passaro was found not guilty, but he was still linked to the Hells Angels' violence, especially after Altamont. The murder made him one of the Hells Angels' most feared members and cemented his reputation as a ruthless enforcer, willing to do anything to keep the club in power. While he was with the Hells Angels, Passaro also sold drugs, threatened people, and fought with other gangs. The Hells Angels used his harsh methods to protect their areas and gain more power on the West Coast. Passaro's role in the Hells Angels' crimes changed as they got stronger. He made sure that the Hells Angels' business interests were protected so that they could stay on top of the drug trade and turf wars. He was one of the club's best enforcers because he was brutal and willing to use too much force. People looked up to him. Even though the club thought Passaro's actions were necessary, he will always be known for being violent. His role in the Altamont Free Concert disaster and as a Hells Angels enforcer show how far the group will go to stay in charge. Passaro was one of the Hells Angels' most well-known and feared members because he was so dangerous. Passaro still acted like the Hells Angels were aggressive and loyal after the Altamont tragedy. This showed that the gang's rules often cost people their lives. His past shows how the group used extreme violence and unbreakable loyalty to scare and control people. Number 6. David Wolf, Carroll, the ruthless enforcer of the Hells Angels. David Wolf Carroll is one of the Hells Angels' most feared and well-known members because of how violent and brutal he is. He was very important to the Hells Angels' work on the East Coast, especially during the Quebec Biker War, a bloody fight with gangs like the Rock Machine. Carroll's image as a fierce leader and enforcer made him a key gang member. Carroll joined the Hells Angels in the early 1980s and became known for his ruthlessness and dedication. He rose quickly, owing to his violence and ability to enforce the gang's will through brutality. He was vital to the Hells Angels' drug trafficking, extortion, and violent revenge. Carroll handled the gang's most risky and sensitive tasks as a trusted enforcer. He was known to violently and quickly handle disagreements with other gangs or disloyal members. His actions were feared across the East Coast, and he helped the Hells Angels rise to dominance in Quebec. From the mid-1990s until the early 2000s, the Quebec Biker War was one of the Hells Angels' most ruthless and violent times. Hells Angels and Rock Machine clashed for Quebec drug trade and territory. Murders, explosions, and savage attacks marked the struggle as both factions sought power. Carroll, a Hells Angels enforcer, was crucial to this violent fight. Carroll had to eliminate threats to the gang's operations as well as competition in the Quebec Biker War. He planned and executed strategic murders of rival gang members to keep the Hells Angels in control of Quebec's drug trade and territory. He became one of the Hells Angels' most dreaded enforcers due to his ruthlessness. Carroll was deeply involved in the Hells Angels criminal network beyond the Quebec Biker War. He was in charge of moving cocaine, methamphetamines, and marijuana around the world to pay for the gang's empire. Carroll was in charge of the Hells Angels' smuggling routes and kept the police away. He did horrible things that weren't related to land disputes. Carroll made a lot of money for the Hells Angels by blackmailing people, laundering money, and doing other illegal things. His connections to the criminal underworld helped the group grow in Canada, North America, and beyond. Carroll, a trusted Hells Angel, planned violent actions and kept the gang in charge of their criminal empire, which helped the group grow. His violent past caught up with Carroll. Carroll was caught for drug trafficking, murder, and racketeering as the Hells Angels were cracked down. His violent activity and leadership in the Hells Angels made him a prime target for law enforcement, and his conviction was a major blow to the East Coast operations. After his arrest and incarceration, Carroll's Hells Angels legend lives on. His ferocity, loyalty, and violence helped the gang dominate the criminal world, and his name is now synonymous with the gang's most harsh and ruthless techniques. He is one of the Hells Angels' most feared and dangerous personalities, and his story illustrates the gang's ferocity and dominance. Number 5. Jeffrey Jethro Pettigrew, the leader and violent enforcer. People were scared of Jeffrey Jethro Pettigrew when he was president of the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club in San Jose. In the 2000s, Pettigrew was one of the Hells Angels' most dangerous and powerful members. He was known for his role in the gang's illegal activities and violent behavior, which helped the club become known as a violent and ruthless criminal group. As a child, Pettigrew was drawn to motorcycles and the rebellious culture of the Hells Angels. Pettigrew joined the Hells Angels in the 1990s and quickly moved up the ranks because he was aggressive, a good leader, and dedicated. In the early 2000s, he became president of the San Jose chapter, which was in charge of the gang's activities in one of the West Coast's most profitable areas. As president of the San Jose chapter, Pettigrew kept the Hells Angels' drug dealing, racketeering, and deadly fights with other gangs for territory going. He was in charge of the chapter's drug trafficking across California and the US. They sold methamphetamines, cocaine, and marijuana. Pettigrew's involvement helped the Hells Angels take over the drug trade on the West Coast. Pettigrew, the leader of the Hells Angels, used violence to scare off and kill his enemies. Pettigrew killed people, attacked people, and fought with other gangs, mostly the Mongols and outlaws. The gang respected and feared him because he was violent. He was known for quickly attacking anyone who posed a threat to the Hells Angels business, no matter what it took to protect the group. Pettigrew got involved in more than just street fights. He helped the Hells Angels stay strong in California, where drug trafficking and gang violence were common. He planned violent acts and got rid of competitors to help the Hells Angels settle land disputes and keep doing illegal things. From California, he led the Hells Angels to grow into Canada, Mexico, and other places. Pettigrew's involvement in organized crime led to his downfall. In 2011, police looked into his drug dealing and violent behavior. As president, Pettigrew was connected to many deaths and acts of violence. He was also part of an investigation into the Hells Angels on the West Coast. The government wanted him because he killed someone, was involved in racketeering, and was part of a gunfight that killed a rival gang member. Pettigrew was shot and killed in a gang fight in South San Francisco in 2011. His death made the Hells Angels fight with other gangs, especially the Mongols, even worse. Pettigrew's death meant that the San Jose chapter of the Hells Angels lost one of its most important leaders. Even though he died in a violent way, Pettigrew's legacy lives on in the Hells Angels. He was not only a key enforcer and leader, but he also played a big role in the gang's growth across the United States and into other countries. During his time, he was a very important person in the history of the Hells Angels because of his involvement in the drug trade, land disputes, and violent actions by the gang. During his time, he was a very important person in the history of the Hells Angels because of his involvement in the drug trade, land disputes, and violent actions by the gang. Number 4. Chuck Zito, the notorious enforcer and actor. Chuck Zito is a well-known member of the Hells Angels. He took part in the gang's illegal activities and later became a well-known figure in the media. Zito was well known as an enforcer and a member of the New York chapter, but he was also a well-known actor in films and on TV. His story shows that the Hells Angels are both criminals and cultural icons. Zito was born in New York City in 1953. He joined the Hells Angels when he was young because he liked the outlaw and motorcycle culture. He quickly moved up in the New York chapter because of his size, violent reputation, and loyalty to the Hells Angels. Zito was the Hells Angels' most feared enforcer. He fought competitors without mercy to make sure they stayed on top. Zito's childhood made it easy for him to get involved in the Hells Angels' illegal activities. Before he joined the gang, he sold drugs, extorted money, and attacked people. Zito was a member of the Hells Angels and helped run the gang's drug distribution networks, mostly in New York City, where they sold cocaine and heroin. His connections to drug cartels and organized crime groups made him an important person in East Coast operations and gave him club status. Zito was a criminal, but he helped maintain the Hells Angels' violence. He was a fierce enforcer who often settled scores or dealt with competing gangs. He was one of the Hells Angels' most revered and feared members in New York because he always followed the rules. Zito's priority in the gang was to ensure Hells Angels' control over their territory. He fought the outlaws and Mongols in several famous battles. However, Zito's wrongdoing was noticed. Police saw his violent behavior, including drug-related crimes and fights. Zito was a notorious Hells Angels member who participated in many illicit operations, but he never got into problems. His life altered when he joined mainstream media. Zito became recognized for playing a motorcycle gang member in Sons of Anarchy, which was similar to him. He was noticed outside the Hells Angels when he played Frankie Diamonds. He might promote and celebrate outlawry. Zito leveraged his new celebrity to gain mainstream media attention and listeners. He also appeared in other outlaw biker films and documentaries, making him a more important cultural ambassador. Number 3. The notorious enforcer of the Hells Angels, Sandy Alexander. Sandy Alexander was a well-known and important member of the Hells Angels gang, especially in the Quebec chapter. The Quebec Biker War, 1994-2002, was one of the club's most violent times. The Hells Angels fought for control over the drug trade, territories, and power in the area. Alexander's role in this brutal war made him one of the most feared enforcers in the gang's operations in Canada. Alexander became a member of the Hells Angels in the early 1990s. Like many other members, he was drawn to the gang's criminal lifestyle and the sense of brotherhood that came with it. However, it didn't take long for Alexander's skills as an enforcer and his willingness to use violence to make him an important part of the gang's operations. His loyalty to the Hells Angels and his ruthless way of dealing with the gang's enemies quickly made him well known in the criminal underworld. Alexander was a key member of the Hells Angels during the Quebec Biker War. This was especially true in Montreal, where the Hells Angels and the Rock Machine Gang fought bloody turf wars. There were violent murders, bombings, and attacks during the war that killed hundreds of people. Both sides fought for control of the drug trade and land in the Quebec region. Alexander was in charge of planning and carrying out attacks, which included killing rival gang members and anyone else who was seen as a threat to the Hells Angels business. Alexander was one of the most dangerous enforcers in the Hells Angels because he was involved in murder and violent revenge during the Quebec Biker War. He didn't just kill people, he also came up with plans for the gang to get rid of their enemies and gain more control over the drug trade. His actions helped the Hells Angels take over the area, especially Montreal, where they became the strongest gang in the area by the end of the 1990s. Alexander was not only violent, but he was also very involved in the Hells Angels criminal network. He helped the gang sell drugs, mostly cocaine and methamphetamines. His crimes went beyond the usual street-level ones. He was in charge of organizing shipments, smuggling drugs, and keeping an eye on the gang's money laundering. The Hells Angels didn't just smuggle drugs in Quebec. Alexander and his friends helped set up a network of criminal businesses that included money laundering, protection rackets, and extortion, all of which made the gang a lot of money. As the war went on, Alexander's actions got more and more attention from the police, and he became a target for both investigations and prosecutions. He was arrested and found guilty because he was involved in the Hells Angels' illegal activities and was linked to several murders. Alexander's violence and crime caught up with him, as they did with countless Hells Angels. Alexander's Hells Angels legacy endures his imprisonment. Alexander is remembered for his violence and planning to keep the Hells Angels on top. Number 2. John Terrence, Terry the Tramp, Tracy. John Terrence, Terry the Tramp, Tracy was a big part of the early years of the Hells Angels and helped shape the culture of outlaw bikers. Tracy, one of the founders of the Hells Angels, was involved in the club's early ideas and violent, rebellious spirit. Tracy, who was from New York but moved to California, helped start the Oakland Hells Angels in 1957. During this time, the Hells Angels went from being a group of local motorcycle fans to a worldwide gang of criminals. Tracy was more than just a rider. He was the spirit of the club's rebellion against authority and social norms. Terry the Tramp was tough and liked to ride his bike on the open road. He was a free-spirited Hells Angel who turned his back on society and lived a life of crime, violence, and brotherhood. His involvement with the Hells Angels helped the gang grow from a motorcycle club to a global criminal network that deals drugs, extorts money, and uses violence. Tracy was friendly and a planner who helped the gang grow in California and then all over the country. He helped the Hells Angels grow and get new members who wanted to live the same illegal lifestyle as Tracy and the other founding members. He helped the Hells Angels become one of the most famous and feared outlaw motorcycle clubs. Tracy was involved in a lot of violent crimes with the Hells Angels in the 1960s and 1970s. He fought in a lot of turf wars, gang wars, and criminal businesses to make sure that Hells Angels were in charge of other gangs and the police. As time went on, the gang turned into a criminal organization that sold drugs, extorted money, and got revenge on enemies through violence. The Hells Angels were involved in the 1969 Altamont Free Concert, which ended in violence. This changed Terry Tracy's life. The Hells Angels, who were in charge of security for the event, showed their violent side. A spectator was stabbed to death, which showed how chaotic and violent the Hells Angels were. Tracy played a big role in both the Hells Angels' illegal activities and their way of life. Tracy was a well-known Hells Angel who helped the gang's image as a brotherhood that valued loyalty and breaking the law. He also violently enforced the gang's territory. He fought with other gangs and used violence to settle disputes, which made the Hells Angels even more dangerous. Even though Tracy was violent, his power waned as the Hells Angels grew. Law enforcement stepped up its efforts to stop gang crime, and many older members, including Tracy, were arrested and found guilty. Even though he had been convicted of crimes, his status as a founding member and important participant in the gang's early years was still important. The story of Terry the Tramp is both sad and beautiful. He helped the Hells Angels become a well-known biker gang and a criminal group, and his impact on their rise as a powerful outlaw group cannot be overstated. Tracy's biography shows how the gang rose to power in a violent and rebellious way as an early leader. Number 1. Otto Friedley, the Swiss Connection. Otto Friedley is a well-known member of the Hells Angels from Switzerland. He became well known as a Hells Angels enforcer and strategist, running drug trafficking, extortion, and violent enforcement in several European countries. Friedley's legacy is his lack of mercy, his ability to organize complicated criminal businesses, and his work for the gang around the world. In the 1980s, Friedley became a member of the Hells Angels Swiss chapter. Friedley helped start the Hells Angels in Switzerland, which would become their base in Europe. His involvement with the Swiss chapter led the Hells Angels to sell cocaine and methamphetamines. Friedley helped the Hells Angels make important connections with drug cartels around the world and set up drug trafficking routes in Europe, South America, and the US. Friedley took the Hells Angels business outside of Switzerland by setting up drug distribution networks in Germany, France, and the Netherlands. Friedley was well known in the criminal world because he was an important player in the logistics of international trafficking. He used his connections in Switzerland to bring huge amounts of drugs into Europe and other places. He was very important to the Hells Angels networks in Europe and around the world because he handled drug trafficking routes. Friedley also sold drugs and was involved in gang violence. Like many Hells Angels enforcers, Friedley ran illegal businesses and used violence and threats to protect the group's interests. He was very important in getting rid of gang rivals and threats. Because Friedley was known for being a tough enforcer, he often had to do jobs that involved a lot of violence that other gang members didn't want to do. His knowledge of the law and how to run a business helped him rise in the Hells Angels. Friedley was a well-known member of illegal groups and knew how to make money and launder it. He often cleaned up and moved the gang's illegal money, making it harder to find. Friedley's life fell apart after he was linked to several high-profile cases that brought attention to the Hells Angels' activities in Europe. Even though he was a criminal, police found out about his drug trafficking and violent crimes on a large scale. Friedley was arrested in the middle of the 2000s after a crackdown on Hells Angels criminals. Friedley helped the Hells Angels grow around the world, so his arrest hurt the Swiss chapter and the gang's operations in Europe. His conviction and long prison sentence made him less important to the Hells Angels. His importance as a key player in the Hells Angels' growth in Europe lives on. Friedley's story shows that joining the Hells Angels' violent and criminal gangs can make you rich and powerful, but it can also get you sent to jail. He helped the Hells Angels become a global organized crime powerhouse by expanding their operations in Europe. His life is an important part of their history.